Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Blue?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Moraro?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Motion that we excuse Mr. Pop.
Second.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 20th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 20th, 2024.
Support.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Move on to approval of manifest 2024-11. Brett, do you have any questions?
I have not, thank you.
Jeff?
I have none, Madam Mayor.
Rico?
No questions.
And I have no questions. Do I have a motion on manifest 2024-11?
I'll make a motion to approve manifest 2024-11 in the amount of $322,855.51.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Do we have any questions from the previous? No. Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on any item of interest shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. The council will not engage in discussion or debate during public comment. If the matter needs further discussion, the council may direct the city manager to place the item on a future agenda.
Hi, I'm Becky Robert, and I live at 1608 Jansen, up on the hill. And I don't know if anything is being done with this or not about the governor possibly making Norway a sanctuary city being a really big concern that actually affects any of, we're interrelated with our communities. Now, I don't know what's going on, but I will be contacting, other cities, in our county to see about this, because it's pretty scary. And if we don't say anything, from what I understand, there's only a couple of months before it could be a settled issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do we know about that? Anything?
I haven't heard a thing about that. I don't think.
Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on an agenda item only shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. The council will not engage in discussion or debate. If the matter needs further discussion, the council will direct the city manager to place it on a future agenda. We have none. We'll move on to action items. Item number 1, Resolution 2024-09. Fiscal year 2024-2025 operating and capital improvement budgets. Does anybody have any questions on this? If not, do I have a motion?
Just, nope, I'm good. I thought there was a typo here, and then I looked at the rest of them, so we're
Looks
good.
like there's
It's on
5.
2024-09.
There's 5 motions here.
Yep.
And you can take them one item at a time.
You have to.
Yeah.
You guys want to start with the, where's he saying 5, this?
Yeah, there's,
There's 5 total resolutions for the total adoption of the 24-25 budget.
I was confused that it started with resolution 2024-09.
all motion That we approve Resolution 2024-09, fiscal year 2024-25 operating capital improvement budgets.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Landini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
I'll make a resolution to adopt Resolution 2024-10, General Appropriations Act.
Support.
When you say resolution, you meant motion, right?
Yeah,
Motion,
you
the
said-
resolution, yes.
Mr. Landini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution, Resolution 2024-11, Major Street to Local Street Fund Transfer.
Support.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Landini?
Yes.
Do you want me to say a really quick touch on my pay rate, because it has the
Yes.
position?
You guys were chatting about that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point one thing out. It did not change the budget financially, the numbers are all the same, but the Parks and Rec Committee had discussed several times about adding a seasonal park maintenance supervisor to the mix, and therefore hiring less college kids, and instead hiring 2 plus someone to oversee them directly. The idea was to just keep a little more direct supervision and maybe get a little more production out of them. So I put it in here because it has to be in here if we were ever to hire that position. It doesn't mean that we will hire that position. If the council isn't interested in that and would rather stick to just the college kids, that's fine. You can still approve this resolution. I just will not hire that, the supervisor role at $20 an hour. We would just hire a third college kid.
I'm just gonna give my opinion on this. I think we need a couple more college kids hired. We only have 2. I don't see where we should have to pay a supervisor for 2 grass cutting.
I'd rather have 2 more grass cutters.
Yeah, me too. And not only that, if you take 2 to do the town area, shouldn't be a big thing. You're gonna start probably up at the spring, come around, do City Hall, the Fire Hall, do maybe the trimmings on the guardrails in that.
Marion
And
Park.
it's probably, yeah, well, then you'd probably take your other 2 and keep the parks going. It shouldn't be that to me, I don't think we need a supervisor for that. I think we need a couple more grass cutters.
And the supervisor will be cutting grass. That person will be doing the exact same work, it's just,
I could see where
Helping
years ago,
the delegation.
when we had like 10, 12 kids for summer help, this little bit of kids, there's no reason that, we can't tell them, here's where you start, rotate around, and probably by the time the week is done, they'll be back to the starting point and go around. So I'd rather see a couple more grass cutters because of,
Before you look at a supervisor.
yeah.
yeah, and the other part too, just for later on, we were looking at using that person to help identify maintenance things and just a lot of park stuff in general that we feel sometimes can get missed by Public Works, and not our Public Works alone, but it's very common amongst
But if there's
municipalities and
stuff down at the parks, I think the Diamonds can do that. I don't think nobody needs to be paid for that. They can see what's going on.
At that particular park. I
Yeah,
suppose, but-
well, oh yeah, and when I say go around too, that would be probably Strawberry Lake, Vulcan, Hanbury Lake, so I'm telling you, if you start at the week, you probably have the same rotation. So, that's just my opinion, I don't know how everybody else feels.
So you're not asking for us to approve that supervisor, you're saying
Yeah, I mean,
you want us to say, in case we need this supervisor, this is in place?
it's in play. You can approve this resolution as is, and, like I said, I get the feeling that council isn't interested in that, so I just wouldn't hire the position. It would just stick here, but I just wouldn't hire it.
Thanks.
Do I have them?
I'll make a motion to recommend the adoption of the Resolution 2024-12, the pay rate for non-union employees for fiscal year 24-25.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Landini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Who supported that, or
Yes.
Brett?
Birthday, yeah.
Okay. Resolution 2024-13. General Utility Service Rate Resolution for the fiscal year of 2024-25. Do we have any questions on that? If not, I would need a motion.
I'll make the resolution. I'll
Make
make
the
the
motion.
motion to adopt Resolution 2024-13, the General Utility and Service Rate Resolution for fiscal year 24-25.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. McKinney?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
No.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. 2024 local paving project bid awarded.
Excuse me. So we put, this road project is part of the fiscal year that is upcoming in July that was just approved. We put this bid out there a couple months ago with, time not on our side in the summer. We did our bid openings a couple of weeks ago. We had two bidders, Payne and Dolan and Baco Construction. Payne and Dolan came in at the lowest bid at $488,210. And that is the recommendation from Coleman Engineering. You'll see in your packet they do have a recommendation based on that bid. The total bid came in at about $7,000 more than we had estimated in our major and local road fund. Like I said, I'm not worried about a $7,000 difference in those two particular funds. They're easily covered. Unlikely need to do a budget amendment, but I would still move forward regardless of that difference. The only other thing I am discussing in here and recommending is I've had several phone calls really since I started here about Travis Farm Road, which you can see on your on the TV screen there. This is mostly a dirt road. The first 700 feet or so had been paved at some time. It's a narrow road. It's a long road. It's probably $150,000 worth of pavement plus road improvements to get there. Unlikely we would ever feasibly pave this road. But the request that I've had from the few homeowners on that road is that the pavement that is there is just, you can see it.
It's bad.
It looks like mortar rounds.
See it from space.
Yeah.
So I had Coleman reach out to Payne and Dolan if in fact they are the awarded bidder for this. And Coleman estimated around $7,000 to $10,000. They were working on getting a more hard estimate, which at this point he didn't have, but to basically just crush and remove that asphalt that is currently there, about 700 feet worth, and then just bring it back to gravel. At least then we can grade it and maintain it a little better and get rid of the potholes. When it first was brought to my desk, if we could do it, and I'm thinking it was just like a little bit of a, access on it. I was like, sure, but this would be hard. This would take us a long time to remove essentially all of this here. So with an estimate around 7 to 10, I'm requesting adding an additional 10 to that project. Again, that puts it over budget a little bit, but in those two funds, there's plenty of money and this is what it's for. And this road doesn't get a lot of attention. We do maintain it, but it's tough. It's narrow.
And I will say during the years, we had a lot of people come in on that road. I mean, I wish we had the money to pave it, obviously we don't. But I know that driving it on that road myself, that front part is terrible with the pavement on
Really
it.
talk about the crown a lot. As farther down it goes, it's really big drop off.
Washout, yeah.
Washout, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that area drops down. I mean, it's all swamp
Okay.
down there. So if council is so inclined, the recommendation is to approve the award to Payne and Dolan for their award amount of $488,210, and then I'm requesting adding an additional 10 to Payne and Dolan for the contract for Travis Farm Road. They're looking at estimates starting sometime in September and see how far they get, and they may roll into next spring, but they feel like they can get it done this year. So, I know.
That or the whole project?
The project.
Do we get any guarantees from Baco? Do we get any guarantees from Baca to get it done this calendar
Well,
year?
they would all get it done within the fiscal year. But if they don't, it would just roll into the spring. I don't think it's a really bit of a concern.
I do.
Okay.
Those highway contractors get real busy in the spring.
Yeah, but we'll be first on the list. We've had this happen before.
Yeah, we
You
got
know,
pushed for Main Street.
Right, because if you wanted it done earlier than this, we really should have, had the bids out.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, I would like to see them done before snow flies this year.
Yeah.
And they're not giving us any guarantees of that.
No, I don't know if either would be able to guarantee. I mean,
All the road projects that I've been on since I've started here have been done.
well, they do have, all right, so I guess that's not correct. They have a guarantee of a certain time to finish, at least in the state projects, which was Main Street, and they didn't, they had to pay an excess amount to.
No, I understand a week or 2 or 3 overrun, but I would really hate to see these
There-
projects roll into next
yeah.
spring.
What I'm trying to explain is just so you know, you can have your feeling on it or not. We would have had to have these bids out long before that, so we were starting in the spring to get it done before snow flies.
To have a better of a guarantee.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because we just put the bids out, you're already looking
Yeah, I
at,
hear you.
so we would have had to have the bids out probably in November or something.
I mean, honestly, there may be a deadline in that entire bid packet. It's not something I really discussed with Coleman. I wasn't really concerned about the project getting done within a fiscal year at the same rate, so.
And I know where you're coming from, Jeff, what
Yeah.
you're saying. I'm just saying from years past when we did.
Are you
Yeah.
concerned quality of the,
We did $1 million worth of roads 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was. We got them done before the end of fall, before the end of construction season.
But we had it bid out way before that.
I don't know, Ken.
Yeah, we did because we waited a year on it and then they came because of the price of the pavement was higher. So we were even a year behind that because we waited that year and did it the following year.
Okay.
is it concerned like the cold weather and the quality of the asphalt?
I just want to get the project
Done.
done.
Good project.
Sure.
And I understand where you guys are
I
coming
think that's what
Yeah.
covered, sorry.
Yeah, I think once they're.
And I sure don't want to see
once they're
roads
here-
tore up without being paved, right?
Right.
I think we gotta have
Right.
that put in place.
Yeah, I think
right?
once they're here, the ones that they're it's
Yeah.
gonna be done. They're not, yeah, we'd have a problem if they packed up.
Brett, don't you agree with me though? We had the bids out way before that.
If we would have, in my opinion, again, I can't speak for Baca or Van Dolen, but if they're receiving, or if they're outbidding anything right now, they're out roughly 6 to 8 months,
Yeah.
just in their paving alone. So if somebody can try to fit it in this year, okay, but I don't want to be pushed into October, November, like either company,
No.
and wind up with bad asphalt.
Exactly.
Of that process. So I think both companies are probably out that far.
I was actually surprised they were even gonna do it this year by the time we had the bid out.
And I think that's, another reason why we tried to get the bids out earlier this year to. try
Well,
and
that's
get
why I
it-
kept saying, get the bid out, get the
Yeah,
bid
and
out.
we did that, and I think we did a good job of it, however, I just don't know that, either company will be able to guarantee it in this year.
I think
Thanks.
that's something that the longevity of the council, our collective, oh yeah, we did this company 5, 6 years ago, something that we can remember when it comes to this process. I know it's probably hard to get them to write something like that in.
I'll look at that.
If you want him to look and see, but,
That's not what I was saying. I just,
no, but I'm just saying, if you guys wanna wait, but
I mean,
the
I-
numbers out there now.
So I would recommend that we move forward. If we go with Payne and Dolan, I can review that for a timeline. Again, I guess I'm not terribly concerned about it getting done and appropriately done. I don't expect that they leave open roads, like crush something and then leave it for the entire.
No,
winter.
I don't think that was the meaning of it. The meaning of it is, we would've liked to have it all done this summer.
Sure, yeah.
So do I have a motion?
I'll recommend approving the notice of award from Coleman Engineering awarding the contract to Payne and Dolan Incorporated for $488,210, and further recommending an additional $10,000 to have Payne and Dolan Incorporated remove the pavement from Travis Farm Road and return it to gravel.
Support.
Mr. Magee?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
We'll move on to discussion items. Item number 1, review of Norway Blight Dangerous Building Code Ordinance with revisions.
So this is something we just kind of put together. I know blight has been a discussion now for a few months, and just kind of wanted to get some of our current ordinances and process in front of you guys, and also some proposed changes that the city attorney and I have been kind of working on. So I kind of look at this in 3 different categories. You have your grass and weeds, you have your blight, which is your junk and things in people's yards, and then you have your dangerous buildings, which is your buildings that are really dangerous, that are houses that are halves and falling down, and dealing with those, as well as some. It also considers it just some deterioration of
In
buildings.
disrepair?
Correct. So just really quick, I'll start with the easy one. So grass and weeds, our ordinance is enforcement at 10 inches or taller for grass or weeds. So when we see a property that reaches about that level, the police have a standard letter that they send out providing the individual a 10-day time frame to have it taken care of. And once that expires, they check that property. If it's still in the same condition, then we contract out the mowing of that property and send them a bill and or put it on their tax roll. Fairly straightforward. The only difference we're trying to do now is looking at door hangers to try to get a quicker response, because you identify, you do the report, you mail it, you pay for stamps, and then it's just a longer process perhaps than it used to be. For the blight stuff, it's a similar type of process. The big difference here is that instead of we hiring someone after 10 days to cut the grass, we don't, after 10 days, go on someone's property and remove their items. There's this is where fines are more involved, fine after fine, discussing with the attorney. And if it's at some point, you can get and Grant, please correct me if I'm wrong, proceed to get like a court order to actually physically remove what is deemed blight. So it's a tougher process, a little bit longer of a process. But those are your 2, basic blight and weed ordinance. The dangerous building one, that's a bit of a different animal, and from what I can tell, this ordinance has not been put into place, has not been tried. We have not had a dangerous building that we've gone down this process to rectify the problem. So,
How do you know that hasn't been tried?
I just looking back at records and looking at properties and talking to individuals who have been here, this particular process, which I don't know when it was developed, but it requires the mayor appointing a hearing officer to hear cases of the properties that we have deemed dangerous, and several definitions of what that is.
Yeah, I think we jumped from blight to dangerous buildings. I think there's a hole there personally. I mean, Grant, wouldn't you consider blight a structure that is in disrepair? Holes in the walls, holes in a roof, things falling down, busted windows, unoccupied. Doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous, but it's definitely blight at a different level.
There's overlap.
Yeah, for
Definitely.
sure.
Definitely.
I don't want to have a hole there, because I think most of the stuff we're talking about is that, not a dangerous building, so to speak.
Well, and you're hitting the point. There's different levels of people not following through and taking pride in their property. And it's in the city and every other community, but there's different levels of it. There's the people just, doing the no mow May. I noticed, I try to walk as much as I can, and I get out and I notice the grass is getting longer and longer on my walks during May. And I wondered, what would happen on June 1st? And I noticed quite a few of them were cut. And I thought, all right, I can tell what they were trying to do. There's others that just are AWOL. They're not around, they're not cutting grasses, and it's an eyesore. Mr. Stoltman and I just were chatting with Mr. Wilkie, making sure that tickets are being issued. He's on top of it. We've had concerned citizens that are contacting us. expressing the same frustration with grass. And nicely, Mr. Wilkie was already on top of it and had already issued a number of the tickets on some of the properties. So you got grass, and then you get into the blight where you start talking about, grass is kind of a subchapter of that, but you start getting into furniture, old vehicles, junk, and then even on top of that, as you're pointing out, Councilman Marharo, their homes a lot of times are unsightly and causing issues and getting to the point of blighted. But what I was seeing in our
Or even more so, unoccupied, right? It's not so much the home itself, I understand some of that, but it's the unoccupied buildings that aren't necessarily designated as dangerous, but it is blight.
Well, and the way I when we do these ordinances, right? Nobody's reinventing the wheel. I don't claim to be some savant of drafting ordinances. What all the municipal attorneys do? We all read all kinds of ordinances and we try to draft something that can be fashioned for our community. And what I was seeing, we've had this dangerous building ordinance in place for some time. I don't know when it was adopted per se, but it's been in place for some time. We've never had a hearing officer appointed to kind of start that process. In this proposed ordinance that I wanted you guys to review, it goes one step further even. I'm a big believer in due process. And
Yes.
making sure when you start to talk about people's property,
Yes.
you want to make sure that everybody has a say and a voice to make sure that, hey, just because I think it's dangerous or blighted, you have an opportunity to address that. So with this ordinance, in our current ordinance, we have a hearing officer appointed, and then the appeal would go right to circuit court. Reading this council, all right, and being an active council, I added in some language about further appellate rights from the hearing officer. I don't know who the council would or the mayor would want to approve or name, but again, it's about the community trust. It's about transparency, a process. So I added in some language that even after the hearing officer has an opportunity to make a decision, the property owner can then appeal to the city council if they so chose. And the council could listen and make a decision as representatives of the community whether or not they agree or disagree with that hearing officer. Then the appeal would be to circuit court at that point. Or, and it depends on the situations, we may request a court order allowing us to take action, which is another step of protection. But as to the blight, this is a whole separate ordinance. We don't have a separate ordinance for blight. When we've been looking back on this, looking for certain language. In our International Property Maintenance Code, it's a large volume. There's everything is in there. But I was looking for the words blight, and it's declared a public nuisance. We don't have that in our ordinances. A nice, easy reference to our ordinances to say, this council has decided blight is a public nuisance, and we're going to take action against it. So the blight ordinance encompasses, and I looked at our junk vehicle ordinance, okay? I didn't like the way it read. I wanted it cleaned up a bit, if you will. In our current ordinance, it has side yards, front yards, backyard, all these exceptions. I want the council's input. Under this proposed ordinance, junk vehicles are not permitted unless they're in a garage. No more exceptions for side yards. No more exceptions for backyards. That's up to council for some direction. But when you start getting into all these exceptions that are in our current ordinance, it left a lot of room for interpretation. And I think it's best for communities and for community members to be able to look at our ordinances and be clear and have a member of the public look and say, what's my expectation? What am I supposed to do? It needs to be clear from us so that the people of the public know this is what's okay, this is what's not okay. So that got cleaned up a little bit, and our junk vehicle ordinance got rolled into, as a proposal, into this blight ordinance. As to your comments too, Mr. Marrero, the dangerous building in that ordinance as well, it talks about, it's not necessarily, hey, we're gonna come in and bulldoze your building. It's, we need you to take steps that you're not doing to fix your building, like holes in walls, broken windows,
Correct.
secure it. And it gives, again, we're dealing with people's
Holes in
property
the roof,
rights.
exactly.
I'd rather err on the side of caution with property rights, but at some point, the property rights of the individual start affecting the rights of the whole and the community. And I think that's what you guys are hearing, and what I'm hearing is that people are getting a little tired of it and want some more enforcement mechanisms in place to do what we can to try to make sure our city stays as good as it looks.
And yet be very fair to the property owners, no doubt.
Just a gym teacher, okay? But putting things in 3 different categories, okay? Grass, weeds, get your stuff cut. I don't know if wintertime snow shoveling would fall under that category as
There's
well,
another
as far as-
section for.
Another for that, okay.
But same kind of.
Blight is junk in your yard, whether it's a junk vehicle or 16 snow blowers or, 5 dilapidated trampolines. That's blight. Dangerous buildings, anything with holes, with holes in it, whether it's a roof, a door where people can get in and out of, rodents or people or kids or whatever. I mean, that's how it wraps around in my head. Am I way off the base on that?
No.
Okay, so I'm just, before I get into the weeds of, like what you're saying, and I appreciate that, what's the expectation before we get into that, confining of a detail? Okay.
And one of the other things, and I mentioned it to Councilman Marrero last time, what we've been seeing is some issues with, it's been referenced as, and I think it is criminal justice reform, where the state of Michigan has taken the approach, I'd suggest a little bit like the state of Wisconsin from what I've seen, decriminalizing a number of actions, and making them more civil infractions. Wisconsin, a lot are civil infractions versus criminal, having the nuances of a criminal misdemeanor, criminal felony, et cetera. And I think Michigan has taken that step as well a little bit. But one of the other things is the enforcement mechanisms with tickets has changed a little bit because the old enforcement mechanisms resulted in the next step usually being turning a situation into criminality. And it was snowballing, and I think they rolled that back a bit. So what municipalities have been doing is adjusting to make it, and I think we talked about that last time a little bit, the frustration of how quickly things are getting done or not getting done. And one of the things I chatted with Dan and Mr. Wilkie about was trying to get an expedited formal hearing in front of the court quicker to get in front of a judge to ask for relief. Because you're involving me and the courts, and I think there's more time and effort involved and costs. So we pick and choose. I don't think necessarily grass is generally going to be an example for that. However, like used furniture, Mr. Minigini, I've referenced, you see toilets in the yard. Sometimes people plant flowers in them. Is that blight or is that art? We may take the position, is something like that, well, that's blight. In order to go in and remove it or take action, I want a court order saying that that's appropriate because, again, due process, property rights. But what we talked about was finding a way to expedite that a bit or having triggering mechanisms like 3 tickets and something is not getting done with blight results, and then the next step to the judge for an opportunity to be heard from our position, whether or not the judge agrees it's blight and whether or not remedies should be taken and what we should do about it and get that court direction. So that was one of the other things we discussed was that process, but these ordinances, I think, in my opinion, help define a little bit more, kind of like Mr. Minigini referenced, what constitutes blight, what constitutes a dangerous building. Our current ordinance doesn't have some of those definitions. This one's a little bit more detailed and allows, again, the public to look and say, this is what's acceptable, this is what's not acceptable, and make sure everybody knows, here are the expectations, and then this is what's going to happen if you violate those expectations or ordinances.
Interesting you bring up decriminalization. It's versus criminal charges versus civil charges, right? You find now that you have property damage or destruction, and the prosecutors choose not to criminalize that offense and have your only remedy be in the civil court. And that's all great, but if the person that has perpetuated that damage can afford to pay you for that damage, then it's basically, there's no, what's the detriment to do so?
Yeah, and that's one of the tough parts, that, you know, prosecutors get put in positions, they have to make a call.
Yep.
And it's not always easy, but sometimes they have to make those decisions.
Oh, it's easy.
Well, sometimes, but I hear where you're coming from. And one of the things that has created issues with our situation like this is unpaid tickets would result, one of the fallouts, specifically the people's licenses would get suspended.
That's gone.
That's no longer in place. I'm not suggesting there aren't other enforcement measures. I'm not suggesting that the courts don't take opportunities to enforce these tickets, but that was a big hammer that is not in place.
Thanks, Grant.
Just a couple of things for council to kind of see and hear when you review. The last kind of, and these aren't separate, so I'll go through where the original is, and then there's.
Can I hold on a second?
Yeah.
I think Councilman Kramer had something.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe-
Sure?
Maybe he'll cover it, but
All right.
Well, I don't-
He looked like he had something really important to say.
I will bring it up before we get up to something.
Okay.
If you want to go, mine's simple. You can,
Okay, some questions I do have, you know, you look at, you know, grass and weeds. After 10 days, we can have a contractor go out there and mow lawn, right? That contractor's still gonna get paid. What cost is that to the city?
well, yeah, we charge the full amount plus something.
Absolutely, and it's just
Yeah.
conversation piece, right? What cost is that to the city? If it's $200 a yard or $100 a yard?
Yeah.
You know, legal fees, what is that roughly gonna cost when we start doing civil cases? So do we have any idea at what that cost would be to the city to enforce all these things legally?
Depends what it is. Depends
Right,
on, right.
And I mean, we start venturing into this, you start spending 100,000, I don't know, 50,000, what is that number in legal services?
I don't think it would be to that extent, thankfully. I think that based upon the reduced rate that we provide to the city, I think it could, depending on, again, the circumstances, depending on what the issue is, I think it could run into the low thousands. The hope is that the word would get out that the city is enforcing and going after it, but I 100% agree, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, I've been urging, and we've talked about it, as many different ways as possible to effectuate people taking pride in their homes, their properties, without the need for legal intervention, because it just, all of a sudden, there's increased costs. And it's crummy that the city has to undergo and have those costs incurred for those reasons. But
And I jotted this down, Brett, about, especially about that grass cutting, was, city come and do it, and the owner, you know, gets the bill on their city bill. There should be a fine or violation or a service charge or something else.
I think it was on their taxes.
Well,
Something else should be added on to that.
I think there may be an administrative percent added
But
on to
it
that.
should be hefty.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be, oh, well, city will come and do it, and I'll pay for
Right.
it on my.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a I mean, we're contracting it out, so it's probably not cheap, but from a legal perspective, I mean, grass cutting is probably the least, I mean, we don't really consult on that. We, you know, it gets to a certain height and we send
It's just another cost.
Like, he's correct.
Mr. Kramer's point is well taken,
And
but
here's the whole thing of it. I wish we didn't have to have that conversation.
that's the problem. So what do? You turn a blind eye to everything? Right, you can't do that either, right?
Right.
You pick the,
Pretty expensive for him to be
If I may though, within the ordinance, there's provisions. Number one, the court is likely to award some costs and attorney fees. But what's in the ordinance is that allows us to go ahead and lien the property for the costs and if we get.
Correct.
That's the whole, it's following the
there's no
process.
attorney fees for grass, right? We know that, okay? Blight could be, depending on how bad it is, what it turns into, but I would think more times than not, it probably won't come down to, you know, it's gonna come down to tickets and that type of thing, right? Again, understanding that it could go there. I think the big one's the buildings, right, the property, but at that point, you start getting to, you know, derelict property, things like that. Now you're talking about possibly repossessing the property and things like that, there's value there back against your cost, Brett, that's what I'm getting at.
More of a question. Or
Yeah, no,
I
I'm with
think
you.
it's a good thing to bring up.
It's a good thing to bring up. There's always costs involved when you start getting lawyers involved.
Right.
Don't we know that, Grant?
And that's what I'm saying, if the city's involved with, yes, our fines and fees and everything, but if the city's involved with then contracting the garbage removal for the blighted property, contracting the lawn care business to come in, that's not, I know it's not free because we'll be paying for that business, but us finding the people to do that work, there's a cost associated with that, a service fee, if you will. I mean, and I disagree with just one little thing, Jeff, is I'm afraid is if we start talking about vehicles, on blighted ordinances, if we start talking about that, I think, when I drive around town, that's what I see a lot of. I see a lot of junk vehicles, or what I'm terming junk vehicles, in yards all over the place.
Where are we in disagreement, buddy? I don't understand. As
You
far as
said
cost,
the big ticket stuff was the houses and stuff like that.
I don't think cars are a big ticket thing. I think the owner needs to get them out of there, right? Or if we gotta get them told, what's that, $100? It's not the end of the world, I think your property stuff is your big ticket stuff.
Or you're moving someone's property, I think.
No, I'm
That's
not-
where they might get fired.
Yeah,
That's
I get you,
where-
I understand. But I think Brett's talking about $50,000 and $100,000 bills where, I think that's, I hear you, but
Yeah.
I think it's semantics at this point.
One court case can lead into how many weeks?
Well, and there's the way
Over a derelict car? Probably
More
not.
house thing, right?
No doubt, that's where I went on the actual
Right.
home, physical property, lot, yeah, that's a whole different animal, I agree 100%.
And there's some that would
But I hear
fall
you.
under that dangerous building from a house perspective that there's no question their condition. They're literally halves of houses. No roof, I mean,
Holes in the
those are the ones we would,
Bricks fall into US too.
the vehicle thing,
You gotta watch with that too, just so you guys know, and I mean, if everybody agrees, nothing is nothing. It applies to everybody, but you gotta watch, because there is people in this town that have plow trucks, that they only license them for the winter. So you might wanna look at that as.
We may have to, right, we may have to do something in the ordinance for that.
And you'll see
We've
there's-
talked about that before.
yeah, and there's provisions in the vehicle one now specifically about like race cars, that, because obviously we have a track here, people, that they can be unregistered and I think outside and not
course.
considered junk vehicles.
Yes.
There'll always be provisions.
Not 20 of them, but
And
maybe
well,
more.
correct. And vehicles, like I said, vehicles have been a problem in a lot of places. I've been in places where the last community, we would just tow. We'd tow.
Right.
It wasn't a big process, but every state's different in how you can do that. And we also had municipal court, so they came and spoke to our judge at it.
Right.
It was just a different process. And Grant and I have discussed the vehicle thing, and it's just not as straightforward or simple here, it
Right.
seems. But when we look at all of our ordinances when it comes to vehicles, weeds, blight, a lot of it stems from that international property maintenance code that we have.
That's where I start to read it.
That's where a lot of it stems from, and then we have an ordinance that kind of fills in X in, 10 inches for weeds, such a thing. But in all of this, what you'll see, and I apologize, they weren't separated more specifically, but you'll see dangerous buildings here. This is the repeal and replace version. So the first dangerous building is the revision. Then the one after that is the current dangerous building, so you can kind of see the difference. Same goes for blight and public nuisances. This is essentially repealing, replacing the disabled vehicles. Not replacing disabled, but incorporating it into, as Grant said, a larger blight ordinance, and then you'll see the original disabled vehicles.
I thought it was a lot of great information.
Great start.
You and Grant got together for us.
Yeah,
and I
great start.
appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are hearing us, and I just want the community to know we're hearing them too. We'd like to get some things cleaned up here, so we gotta go about it the appropriate way and work on some of this. So, should we have Grant and Dan go forward with working on more of this?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd love to be a part of if there's a workshop or a little committee or something, I'd love to be a part of that. To be able to
Yeah,
add
I mean,
my 2 cents. along with everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, however, Grant want to form such a thing, or
Next time you guys, you
Just
know,
keep the flame on, guys, keep it moving,
pencil out
that's a big
some
thing.
time, let me know.
And let's say the police department's well aware of this, you know, they've done, you know, pretty much every blight we had in the last 3 weeks, we had already sent out the letters. We have, you know, our school resource officer in the summertime, the idea from the beginning was to focus him a little bit on blight during the summer months, just to make it quick and efficient. So that should start helping as well. But I do think we're moving in a good direction, it's just, it can get a little complicated, and when someone complains one day, it takes 10 or plus days before we can.
I am a libertarian through and through. Property rights are at the core of every citizen's, you know,
Right.
to me, basic rights. This is not taken lightly. We totally understand that. It's got to be done smartly and with obviously the property owner in the forefront of our minds. But yeah, we need to move some things forward.
And we've developed a letter that is kind of the letter before we actually send a letter for enforcement in some of these dangerous buildings, trying to get compliance before we have to go down, you know, that route. So I'm looking at different ways.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
We'll move on to mayor council comments. Brett, do you have anything?
I have none, thank you.
Jeff?
I do, Madam Mayor. Just want to mention Dave Ball retired last week. Want to thank him for his probably 30 plus, 32 years service. You know, he's done a great job for the city and full of knowledge, and we wish him the best. A lot of complaints, a lot of people talked to me the last month about the water leak on the corner by the spring on US 2. Just so everybody can hear loud and clear, is not our issue. We did not do that. You're right, you should come to us. We will be putting pressure on the county and the state to figure something out. I do believe it is a hazard, especially in winter. That's a corner with black ice when we get a nasty winter. We're lucky we had a warm winter this year. And I do think we need to start talking to somebody at, you know, the county/state level about what they're gonna do with that whole mess up there. That, by the way, Highline, I believe, did a bore there when they put the fiber in, and it hit some groundwater, you know, just some veins that feed the spring groundwater type thing, so that's why the leak happened.
It's underground water.
Correct.
That's what it is, yeah. There's
Correct.
a spring of some sort.
Correct.
Not exact, but if there's something going on with the spring, just.
Yep. Well, there's a spring there, so guess what? A lot of veins are leading up to that spring feeding it, so when they bored it, something happened, and now we got a leak. Okay, great. No vote on the utility increase. It was only for the electric fund, and that was bundled in. I have a tough time voting any utility increases with a fund that is healthy and making money.
And you could have made a motion on not including that one.
Thank you, Candy. I'll remember that in the future. But that's where my no vote was on the utility increase. I think every other increase is needed. The last comment I'd like to make is the streets project. Unfortunate, you know, Baca would love to give it to the local contractor, but 3.5%, which equals $17,455, is real money. And I just want to let everybody know that we always take that in consideration, the local bidders, and I think this time it was just a bit too high to recommend. Thank you.
Nico?
Yeah, just echoing Councilmember Moraro, you know, congratulations to Dave Ball for many long years of service. We're looking diligently to try to find replacements for a few positions. You know, well, once again, I think maybe we saw that when City Manager Anderson retired. I think we saw that when our Finance Director, Ms. Pollard, Mary Pollard left. You know, it's important to be able to, or I shouldn't say it's important. It's a lot easier when we have these positions filled, you know, with Chief Wilkie taking over for Chief Schaefer, you know. The importance of that, it's not easy, it's not easy, it's not easy, it's not easy. But I just want to keep on reiterating the importance of trying to have a succession plan. So there's not a lot of gaps in service or just the knowledge that walks out of the door after 30-plus years. I'd also like to say school's out starting Thursday, so please, keep your eyes and ears and everything open for the little ones that might be out and about. Slow down, make sure you're watching, make sure you're prepared, and congratulations to our city baseball, or our high school baseball team that's playing for their first regional championship. Hopefully to win their first regional championship on Wednesday, 4 p.m., Marion Park.
Nice.
Thank you.
I also would like to thank Dave Ball for all his dedicated years of service to the city. I want to thank the council. We put in multiple hours on the budgets. I felt like we worked together. We made a lot of hard decisions. But I want to thank each and every one of you. Everybody's got things going on, and we put a lot of hours into this. And I just want people to know that, we just don't sit here at night behind the microphone, and there's a lot of work to what we do here. Natalie, I was going to ask you, since the end of the fiscal year is coming, can we get a report at the end of the year to see what's left in each budget?
Fund balance?
Yep.
Yep.
And don't forget, this Thursday, first Thursday, Music in the Park. Come down and enjoy it. A lot of work has went into this. We got a lot of good bands this year. We got a lot of good people coming in, crafters and.
Yep, open air market as well.
Yeah, the open air
Kick off that.
market. So come down and enjoy that. That's all I have.
I have nothing.
All right, Grant,
Nothing, Madam Mayor, thank you.
all right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mrs. Drew?
Yes,
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. McAnally?
Yes.
meeting adjourned.
Mr.